Welcome back to the Football Casual. Back with another debate reaction. You might have thought I was going to do a Chelsea video. Hell no. That club, man, we'll talk about it eventually, but when we score another Premier League goal, I'll do a video on Chelsea. For now, let's get back to the Zach Jellub debate reactions. Link in the description. Shout out to Zach. Much appreciated for all the content he puts out, and it's great to react to. And this one is Jamie Carragher versus 20 fans. Carragher. I don't know if I might have mispronounced that. Jamie Carragher versus 20 fans. I did John Terry. I'm still making my way through that one. But this one should be interesting too because Jamie is all over the place with his punditry. I think the first debate we're reacting to is whether the Champions League or the Premier League is bigger. Now, personally, I don't see how that's a debate, but let's see how they debate it. Let's get straight to it.
Debates are finished. Each debate is 10 minutes, but once they're done, they're done.
My first debate is that the Champions League is a much bigger competition to win than the Premier League.
Three,
Easy.
two,
Easy.
one.
I agree.
We have started. Anybody want to rush up to the chair straight away? Wow, very civil to start with. I don't think it will stay like that. Henry, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Henry.
Just quickly, what do you mean by bigger? Do you mean in terms of stature, or do you mean in how hard it is to win?
Fair question.
It's definitely stature and what it means to me. I think it's a much bigger thing to have on your CV.
Do you not think that
Just want to say it's not lost on me that Jamie Carragher, who won potentially, maybe I don't think it's arguable, the greatest Champions League match of all time, Champions League final, is saying that, considering he has not won a Premier League. So it's not lost on me that this agenda suits Jamie Carragher specifically, but I do still agree.
Stature and what it means to me. I think it's a much bigger thing to have on your CV.
do you not think that I think this year in the Premier League is a perfect example of why it's such an elite and hard competition to win? I'm of the opinion that it is head and shoulders above other divisions based on how hard it is week by week. Even last night we saw Leeds go to Manchester United and win. We're seeing a team that's been in the Champions League a number of years in the relegation zone at the moment. And really, if you look at the remaining teams in the Champions League right now, a lot of them have it pretty easy to get to that position. We even saw PSG have their games against Lens rearranged to give them a better opportunity to go further in the competition. Most of the guys in the quarterfinals at the moment are regulars. So in my opinion, it is fairly simple, not simple, that's the wrong word completely, to get to the last eight for a big side. And then you've basically got a really tough knockout competition to go for. I agree with like the whole trophy presentation, the whole stature in the final.
It's not about the trophy presentation, I think it's a bit more than the trophy presentation.
As in, there's some serious aura around. Really,
And you talk about the Premier League. So you talk about the Premier League.
I think Henry makes some interesting points in terms of like for a top team around Europe, it's not the most difficult to make it to past the group stage, especially now the way they changed the group stage, or I can't even call it group stage anymore, the league phase of the Champions League, what it's changed to now. Honestly, it's embarrassing if a top, quote unquote, big top team doesn't make it to the knockout stage. And then from that point, it is pretty difficult because you're facing the top teams in the world. But in that sense, I understand his point. But he's more talking about the difficulty of winning it. I think Jamie's talking about the stature of the competition.
As in, there's some serious aura around.
And
Really,
you talk about the Premier League. So you talk about the Premier League, and Leeds last night beat Manchester United, team at the bottom beat team at the top. We've seen Wolves against Arsenal a few months ago. Do you think that makes a good Premier League?
Yeah, I think it makes it really good. I think
So why is everyone complaining about the quality this season?
people are complaining about the quality. I think people are getting quite lost in the whole tactical nature of the league. I think people
That's down to you
underestimate.
people.
I think people underestimate how hard it is to get through each of these games. Like to put together a tactical system to beat each team in the Premier League, given the amount of managers and the quality of managers in there right now. Like I was at the Emirates the weekend. I watched Andoni outdo Arteta, and that shouldn't technically be right when we look at the money and the resources going into it. There are so many bright tactical brains, and people put so much emphasis on playing good football, when at the moment, really, half the time fans are putting emphasis on winning matches. And this is why...
Sorry for interrupting. I agree. I think the Premier League, when you think of some of the games and what the managers have to put into each game, and the information you have to give players now, how tactically it's a lot more advanced. It's better than when I played. The information when I played was from almost a defensive point of view. how you were organised. An attacking point of view was almost get the ball to Steven Gerrard and Michael Owen. That's not the game now. The game is sort of, we analysed on Monday Night Football, Mikel Arteta trying to play out from the back. They'd have been working on that for days. Who gets the ball? Who makes a movement? That didn't happen when I played. So it's so much more advanced now. But the thing I want to get back to with the Champions League and the Premier League is, this is something that came up when we were covering the Champions League. I don't think our teams get put under enough pressure when they go out the Champions League. We don't criticise them. I'm not saying hammer them, but it's almost like, oh, they went to the Champions League. Oh, next year we'll have another go at it. It's a cup competition, and I get that. But it's looked at completely differently in sort of Spain, where Real Madrid and Barcelona go for the league. It's always one or the other. Now and again, Atletico Madrid. It's not the end of the world if one of them don't win the league. But there's so much emphasis on the Champions League that this is like the trophy. And I, when I look at, obviously...
That's an interesting point. Honestly, I'm wondering why that is. Maybe he's about to say, so maybe I cut him off too early. My bad. But I think that's interesting. I don't know if that's an argument. I mean, I do think the Champions League is bigger. I think even in the Premier League, I mean, most people should agree that it's bigger. But I think in the Prem, people view the Prem as so hard to win that the Champions League is like just this bonus off in fairyland. Like, if we do well in that, that's amazing, but we're really trying to focus on the Prem. But for like you said, La Liga, Madrid or Barcelona, because they know one of them's going to win it every year, it's kind of like, okay, that's kind of a given. Our real success of a season is predicated on if we win the Champions League. And I think you could honestly make the argument. I don't want to make it sound like I'm super Prem biased, because obviously that is what I watch the most. But you could make the argument that's why people say those leagues are easier. Those leagues are farmers' leagues or whatever they want to say about other leagues, because those leagues are such a given to one of those teams that they're able to put so much emphasis on the Champions League. Whereas in the Prem, it's hard to win, so you can't really put all your focus on the Champions League. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe, I feel like that's a kind of argument that could be said, but at the same time, Madrid this year are winning neither, so tough.
Just on the Champions League, this is like the trophy. And I, when I look at, obviously my own club have done really well in that competition, but when you think of Arsenal never winning it, Manchester United only winning it 3. When you're talking about one of the biggest clubs in the world, put themselves up alongside Real Madrid.
Yeah.
There should be more on, for me, the Champions League. We should put more emphasis on the Champions League. We should be more on top of our teams and want more from them in the Champions League, rather than just accepting that they go out and we'll go again next year.
Do you not think that's a issue of the growing monopolies in these divisions, where you've got PSG winning it every year, where you've got Real Madrid, Atletico, Barcelona consistently competing at the top, and it's kind of degraded the overall competitiveness and willingness of people to sit down and watch these divisions, whereas the Premier League, you just have to look at the numbers when it comes to the TV renewals and the money going into it. It is such a global competition that winning that at this point is the pinnacle of football. For me, if you win the Premier League, if you're the best player in the Premier League, you're the best player in the world. I really don't understand why that's not given more emphasis.
I didn't mean to click that, but I disagree. I actually agreed with him up to a point. I feel like he was making the same point I was making, where it's easy for those teams to look at the Champions League as the be-all, end-all. And even, I don't even like saying it with La Liga, because at least they have a competitive race usually between Barcelona and Madrid. If you look at PSG, I mean, this year is different. PSG is actually competing for Liga, but that's disappointment for them to be even in the competition like that they have to be rescheduling games to focus on the Champions League. But if you look at PSG, usually Bayern right now, who just already won their league, I think that's an indictment on their league more than it's an indictment on us as Premier League fans for not getting on Premier League teams, for not doing well in the Champions League. I think that's more of an indictment on the fact that their leagues are such cakewalks for them that they can focus so much on the Champions League, and that's like really where fans get on them. I do agree though with Jamie. We should be talking more about the fact that, let's say, City went out of the Champions League so early. Liverpool, I don't know, Liverpool about to play PSG, but who else went out? Chelsea. Chelsea. I don't even want to talk about that. I don't even want to talk about that. But Chelsea, for example, United aren't even in the Champions League this year, and Arsenal still, and obviously Arsenal holding it down. But yeah, Liverpool did go out. I don't know. I'm tweaking. I don't know why I'm thinking about the last round. Liverpool did go out. Is now Bayern PSG. So yeah, even Liverpool going out. We should be talking about that kind of thing more. But it's kind of just seen as a given. Which is interesting. But what Henry just said, I disagree. I don't think winning the Premier League makes you the best team in the world. I don't know. There are times when that's true. There are times when that happens to be the case. Like you're the best team in the world if you win the Prem, and you may have won the Champions League or not won the Champions League. But to say that like definitively the best team to win the Prem is the best team in the world is just not the case. And to say the best player in the Prem is the best player in the world, that's almost never the case. Even right now, I mean, I think more often than not, maybe you want to say the early 2000s, the 90s, it was Serie A. And then maybe if you want to say there was a period, I don't know when the last time the best player in the world played in the Prem, because for the last 20 years, basically, up until like very recently, the best player in the world was playing in La Liga. And then before that, it was probably Serie A. And now that, Messi's gone, obviously, maybe there were a few years in between there where it was like, oh, is it Mbappe? Is it Haaland? Is it, I don't know, whoever. But people were probably saying Mbappe, whatever, playing in Liga. Now he's back to La Liga. And then now everyone, I don't know everyone, but at least I'm saying the best player in the world is Yamal, who's playing in La Liga. You show me when the best player in the world over the last 20 years was consistently playing in the Premier League. I don't see that as being the case.
Such a global competition that winning that at this point is the pinnacle of football. For me, if you win the Premier League, if you're the best player in the Premier League, you're the best player in the world. I really don't understand why that's not given more emphasis. I think winning the Premier League is such a hard thing to do with the quality of teams running it. Even the way the calendar falls and the amount of matches that fall over certain periods in the winter here, I think to come out of that bruising scenario as the top dog compared to the Champions League, where I think you can kind of ride on the aura that you're talking about when you go into these big European nights. I think you can just sort of muddle your way, even particularly now with the wider group stage, you can muddle your way to the latter ends of the competition and then really go for it. To come through that bruising process in the Premier League and be the top dog, I think that undisputedly makes it.
I agree with you.
He made a good point there in terms of, I mean, we kind of already touched on this earlier, but even if you look at PSG last year, and kind of PSG doing it again this year, where they kind of just were in the Champions League through the league phase, and they had to get in through the playoffs, or the playoff situation to get into the actual knockout stage. But then they flipped the switch and they started dominating all the English teams in the Champions League, and they went on a crazy run to win the Champions League. It kind of does prove what Henry's saying in terms of they can kind of just, phone it in for a while and then just turn it on in the back half of the year, whereas you have to be switched on for most of the Premier League season. So I kind of hear that.
Come through that bruising process in the Premier League and be the top dog, I think that undisputedly makes it.
I agree with you, as in, I think we should be very, what's the word I'm looking for? We should be almost grateful that our league's still competitive. You're spot on all the other leagues not being competitive. But I don't think that automatically then makes the Champions League far bigger than it's been in the past. I do think, I agree with you that for PSG it's so easy to win the domestic league, so there is maybe a little bit more.
The league helps them as well.
But before the Champions League came in, and maybe I'm a bit older than everybody in this room, but the Italian team everybody knew was AC Milan. Not because they were winning Serie A, because they were winning the European Cup. Not the Champions League, the European Cup. That's why I remember Berese.
That's kind of a bar. I want to hear him say that again, but that's kind of a bar. That's kind of a bar. That's kind of a bar. I kind of hear that. If you want to look at the Champions League, or before that, the European Cup or whatever, as like the great equalizer across Europe, and then I guess in turn across global fandom, in that maybe fans don't really look at like, okay, how many league titles has this team in Italy won, or this team in Spain won, or this team in Germany won. We don't really care. Like when I think they announced the other day when Bayern officially won the Bundesliga this year, they were like, it's their however many titles. It was a ridiculous number of titles, and I couldn't have told you before I saw that. I still can't remember. I didn't care how many titles Bayern have won in the Bundesliga, because to me it's such a given in my head. I'm not thinking, oh, Bayern have won 35 Bundesligas, or Bayern have won 70 I don't know, however many it's been. But for the great equalizer across Europe is, how well does this team do in Europe, in the Champions League, in the European Cup. That's really where the brand recognition comes from. That's why AC Milan is a massive club. Even if they haven't done much in the last 15 years, they're still a massive club. That's why Bayern's a massive club. That's why PSG, well, actually, to be fair, you can't really say the same about PSG. But now they are winning the Champions League, but still, I see that. Can't really say the same. But that's why Liverpool Liverpool used to win the league back in the day, but in modern times, when they didn't win the league for 20 years, they had got that Champions League with Jamie and Steven Gerrard and all that kind of stuff. It is a good point in terms of recognition and brand name, and that will make it a bigger competition. Not maybe better. I mean, better is a different argument. I can still argue better because when I turn on the TV to watch the Champions League, it's cinema almost every time, every knockout round. The Premier League is genuine slop to watch these days. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not gonna lie. City, Arsenal the other day delivered, but the Premier League in general, I've started calling it Premier League slop on this channel because the product, it's a competitive league, but the product on the pitch, on TV, has been really difficult to watch sometimes this year. But the Champions League is always cinema.
I'm a bit older than everybody in this room, but the Italian team everybody knew was AC Milan. Not because they were in Serie A, because they were in the European Cup. Not the Champions League, the European Cup. That's why I remember Baresi. That's why I remember Maldini. I don't remember the famous Juventus teams because they never won the European Cup, but they were the most successful team in Italy. When you win the Champions League, it goes obviously around Europe and around the world.
The only reason I look is there's a Juve fan behind you.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they're the most successful.
Oh, I want to see Luca's reaction when he says that. Oh, he's not in the frame. Let me see.
That's why I remember Maldini. I don't remember the famous Juventus teams because they never won the European Cup, but they were the most successful team in Italy. When you win the Champions League, it goes obviously around Europe and around the world.
The only reason I look is there's a Juve fan behind you.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they're the most successful.
I want to hear what he says there, but it's interesting mainly because this might also be a generational difference thing where there's so much more access and there's so much more connected that every fan, whether you follow Serie A or not, knows that Juventus of the 2010s was completely dominant, and we know the players from the team because there's just more accessibility these days. We're probably back when Jamie's talking about, you're not really seeing the Serie A, like the Juventus from back then. You're probably not, like in England, Jamie's probably not watching. I don't know. I could be speaking crazy and you could correct me in the comments. But I assume what he's trying to say is that I'm not seeing the Juventus league campaign on TV regularly. I'm not watching that. But when they come into the Champions League, I'll see that. And when Milan goes to win it, I know these teams, I know these players. But it's different. I think if you're like me who grew up with watching 2010s football and seeing Juventus dominate, I could name, oh, this player who played for Juventus. I think there's a little disconnect there. But I think his overall point still stands.
The only reason I look is there's a Juve fan behind you.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they're the most successful club in Italy. But anybody in England,
it's
Juventus, it's AC Milan.
Very, very interesting. If you're happy to concede there, Henry, anybody want to jump in?
I'm not happy to concede.
Okay,
fair enough. We can agree
one thing I will ask you though, Jimmy, as well, from a player's perspective, where is it? Do you think a player cares more about the Champions League? Do you think a player cares more than the Premier League?
100%. It's certainly with foreign players. With foreign players, I think when you speak to them and listen to them, I do think with English and British-based players, because I have this debate on Sky, and everybody disagrees with me. So Roy, Gary, Micah Richards, I know those are guys who've, well, certainly the Manchester lads, they've won the Champions League. I just think there's a thing in England for the league. Rich, and listen, I'd love to have won the league, and I'm not saying this because of I didn't win it, but when you think of every great English team in history, going back before the Champions League, the Holy Grail was the European Cup. So obviously you all know your football right now. Does anybody know anything of the past? Let's go back to 1968. What was the most famous thing that happened in football in 1968?
United won the European Cup.
United won the European Cup.
League. Exactly.
Right.
It was Man City.
You kind of cooked. Hey, I'm not gonna lie. Jamie cooked. He absolutely sniped them, and that's a fact. That's a fact. When people look back in the past, really, if you look back in the day at like even a team like Nottingham Forest, who was out of the Premier League for a while, didn't win a major championship, whatever, major title, but people look back, oh, they won the European Cup, however long ago, or there are other examples of that too, but that stands out in history. But no one says, and that's why people still think, oh, this is a club that belongs in the Premier League, but it's not because they won this Premier League in 1962 or whatever. I'm just naming random stuff, but I think that's a great point from Jamie. That historically stands out, not the league title wins. That's actually a great point.
League. Exactly. It was Man City.
Wow.
No one remembers Man City winning the league in
yeah.
1968. Manchester United win the European Cup in 1968. Is that enough for you?
Take it, Henry. Take it around. Anybody else want to jump up quickly? Ollie,
He
well
kind
done.
of barred up right there. He kind of barred up.
Oh, I bet you're more for Europe this year, aren't you, than the Premier League?
The Conference League is actually bigger than both. I wanted to talk about a specific season, 18-19, when Liverpool came second, 97 points. Man City win the Prem, but Liverpool won the Champions League. Who do you think left that season happier of the two teams, City or Liverpool?
That's a great question. Brilliant question.
Well done, Ollie, mate.
Thanks.
I'd probably say City.
Why?
That's a great. Okay, well, I was trying to answer it before he answered it. I would have said City too. I'm curious to hear his reasoning, but because Liverpool, I don't know, Liverpool winning the Champions League that year was massive, especially in their history and what they have done, what they hadn't done up until that point since Jamie's Champions League win. But I think going head to head, bar for bar, band for band with City in the league and losing it to them and getting basically, I don't know, just outlasted by City in the end. That's kind of demoralizing. I know they ended up winning the Champions League, but City over the course of the season proved that they were just slightly more, they had it more to win the league. Now, I think that comes back to, is it a better competition to win or a harder competition to win, or is it bigger? I still think even though City could come out of there happier, but you could still say that the Champions League's the bigger competition. I don't think those two things have to align necessarily.
Brilliant question.
Well done, Ollie, mate.
Thanks.
I'd probably say City.
Why do you think that is?
I think because Liverpool were going for the league so much, and Liverpool hadn't won the league for so long. So I was asked. My opinion has always been it wouldn't change. Would I rather win the Champions League or the Premier League? I'd rather win the Champions League. And I think for most footballers that would be the case. But I think for Liverpool in that season, because they hadn't won the league for 30 seasons then, it was all about the league. As soon as Liverpool, and that season I'd rather Liverpool have won the league than the Champions League. But as soon as Liverpool had got that monkey off the back in terms of winning the league, if I was ever asked that again, Champions League.
Do you think that the
Interesting. I see
the
that.
monkey on the back, if you will, that, as you said, of not winning the Premier League is bigger than not winning the Champions League in England? So also around that time, City hadn't won the Champions League either.
And that's the point to go back to on the last debate. In there's something about the Champions League in this country or the European Cup that I don't think is the same in other countries. No one was saying Liverpool haven't won the European Cup for 20 years before we won it in Istanbul, but they'd say about the league.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. Most people in this country, the league is everything, and I totally understand. And I grew up with that, with the First Division, watching my team at the time, Everton, battling with Liverpool for league titles and stuff like that. So I love the First Division, I love the Premier League, but I just think the icing on the cake is the European Cup or the Champions League.
That's an interesting point, because when he frames it like that, then you really see his point earlier when he's saying the teams don't really, or fans don't really get on teams for going out of the Champions League, because in England or the Premier League fans, they're thinking, oh, they haven't won the Premier League in so long, not they haven't won the Champions League in so long. They put so much emphasis on it. But if you went to Spain, and even right now, if you went to Spain and said to Barcelona, you guys haven't won the Champions League since the MSN treble, that's weighing on them. That's why every year it's such a big thing when Barcelona go out, because they're still chasing that, even if Yamal's trying to put them on their back. Whereas Madrid too, if you went to Madrid, and obviously they won it a few years ago, but now they're going trophyless 2 seasons in a row. If Madrid go the next 10 seasons without winning the Champions League, even if they win a few league titles in there, that's going to be a colossal failure, especially with this new Galactico era with Bellingham, Mbappe, Trent, whatever, whoever they're bringing in, already had Vinny. If they go 10 years, or since Mbappe came in without winning the Champions League, that will be viewed as a historical failure for Real Madrid, because this Champions League is the be all end all. And I just think, or as Jamie's saying, the Premier League, they don't view it the same way. Or Premier League fans don't view it the same way, which is it's an interesting difference.
Liverpool for league titles and stuff like that. So I love the First Division, I love the Premier League, but I just think the icing on the cake is the European Cup or the Champions League. And even when you go back to Alex Ferguson was asked this question in '99 a lot when they were going, what would you rather win? And he always said the European Cup. He knew he needed, the greatest manager we've seen probably in English football, he knew he needed to win the European Cup. He didn't need to win another league. He needed the European Cup.
Do you think a lot of it also has to do with almost like the TV access we have nowadays? Because obviously previously, especially we mentioned in the 60s, you would only be able to watch maybe one game a week on what was then Match of the Day or whatever it was. And watching European game was a lot tougher. Nowadays, you can watch any game whenever you want, really. Do you think that's got a big part to it as well?
Yeah, possibly. Listen, I think the Premier League has been such a
earlier.
success story, and so is the Champions League.
Yeah.
That what they've done is, when people talk about the FA Cup, it's in some ways it's the Premier League's fault for being so successful that the FA Cup almost just feels like an afterthought.
Keep going. It's fantastic.
An afterthought. And the reason why I say that is because I went to football. I watched Everton home and away in the First Division. The FA Cup felt like an event. Even if you're playing a lower league team, it felt like the FA Cup started. Mm-hmm. The Premier League feels like that every single weekend. It feels like an event every game. There's a lap of honour. Most teams do a lap of honour now when they win. You know what I mean? It feels like no, they do.
No, you're right.
The managers are on the pitch. Managers are on the pitch. It just feels like you see the crowd, everyone's bouncing. And it's a big thing to stay in the Premier League. It's a big thing, certainly for teams who've been promoted, to win a Premier League game. You see the Leeds get
game yesterday,
players yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just win at Old Trafford. They're celebrating like they've won an FA Cup quarter-final because the Premier League is that big and the Champions League has become that big and powerful. It's always made... The World Cup can never be an afterthought. But when I was a kid, the World Cup was the pinnacle. That was the elite. That was where the best players played. Mm-hmm. The best players don't play in the World Cup. The best players play in the knockout rounds of the Champions League. So the success of the Premier League and the Champions League has basically had a knock-on effect of how we think of other competitions.
Amazing. Brilliant first
Cheers,
debate.
mate.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
Oh,
That's so interesting. I think that last little rant he went on, he was spitting bars in terms of like the product that they put out with the Premier League and subsequently the Champions League, and making it such massive events that makes other competitions feel lesser. The only thing, the World Cup bit, I'm not sure about, because I still do feel like the World Cup people get up for. Maybe you could say other continental competitions, like Euros, Copa America, whatever. But I feel like the World Cup specifically, still you get that feeling behind it. Like, I think the best players still do play in the World Cup. It's just tough because they don't always go as far, because maybe some of the best players are playing for countries that don't have the talent around them. But if you can't tell me that the last World Cup, when you saw Mbappe versus Messi in the final, you didn't get goosebumps. You didn't sit up at the edge of your seat. I mean, obviously it's an easy example because that was one of the greatest finals ever, but just there's something different about that, even compared to a Champions League final. Like Champions League knockout stages, maybe you could argue that over World Cup knockout stages because of the two legs, and there's something about that. But the final, you ain't telling me PSG versus Inter last year, you were more excited for that than Messi versus Mbappe. Hell no. Hell no. But this was a fascinating debate. I'm definitely going to check out more from this video, and I'm still going to get back to the John Terry video, but appreciate you guys for making it this far. If you stuck around, like, subscribe, all the good algorithm stuff, it would be much appreciated. And I'll be back for another video very soon. Peace.